So when I moved abroad to come to the UK, that is, I thought I had everything figured out. I was going to work, not just work, but work really hard, save money, go back to Zimbabwe and live happily ever after. This was my plan. But nobody warned me about the financial realities of aging abroad. Now, I'm not an old woman yet, but guess what? I'm not as young as I used to be. Years are ticking along and I can feel the difference. I mean, my body is telling me I'm not as young as I used to be. So I'm making this video really to open up as to what has been on my mind more than ever lately, and that is finances. I've started to think more and more about my financial reality, and these are things that I wish someone had told me sooner. But most importantly, I want to share with you some of the lessons that I've learned along the way in my worry about finances. What is the future going to look like? There's something that I've learned that goes beyond money. And hopefully these are things that might resonate with you. So first of all, let me talk about the early years, my early years living abroad. When I arrived in the UK, my main focus was on surviving. I wanted to get the job, make sure that I get my salary at the end of the month. I pay my bills, I pay my visa fees, I'm able to send money back home because I had left family back home. But when it comes to things like healthcare costs, retirement, was I thinking about that? Not at all. I mean, I had no reason to think about those things because I was young, full of energy. So that never crossed my mind. But guess what? Life has a way of catching up with you. Over time, I started to realize the importance of planning. Financial planning. By then, I had experienced some tough times. I had gone through some challenges along the way, which had caused me some unexpected expenses. For example, my car had broken down a few times. I also had to call in the plumber to fix my sink, which had started leaking. My boiler had broken down, and also family bereavement. I lost my dad, I lost my mom. I also lost other relatives as well. And I had also had a painful visit to the dentist. I told you my story, how I lost this tooth. So yeah, these emergencies left a huge dent on my finances. In actual fact, I had to borrow some money to pay towards some of these emergencies. And that's when it hit me. Working alone wasn't enough. I had to work, plan, and save, like really save, because even though that was like my dream when I first came to the UK, when I started working, the reality was it was impossible for me to actually hold on to the money because I had a lot of expenses. I had visa fees, which kept on climbing. And I also had to send money home. And I soon realized that the money that I thought that I was going to earn was not the reality. I wasn't earning as much money as I thought I would earn. And over the years, the cost of living has increased. I mean, I used to do a lot with £50 when I came to the UK, but now £50 is nothing. So I had realized that that fantasy that I had when I came to the UK wasn't going to pan out unless I started doing something drastic with the way I spent my money, with the way I handled things, basically when it comes to finances. So I started to realize the importance of having an emergency fund. And I started cutting down for me to be able to save towards that emergency fund. I really started looking at my outgoings versus my incomings, because sometimes we can live beyond our means without realizing it. And we also spend on things that we don't really need. I mean, I could tell you the amount of dresses that I bought that I never wore. That was money going down the drain. So it came to a point where I needed to be honest with myself when it comes to my spending. So I had since cut down on a lot of things. For example, those dresses. So yeah, I had to look at my spending, cut down, and then start putting in something towards the emergency fund. If only I could go back to my earlier years and do what I'm doing now. I mean, I could have more than I have now, but better late than never, right? There's no point in crying over spilled milk. The other thing as well that I've been thinking about is saving towards my retirement. I mean, I'm glad that I joined the NHS pension scheme when I qualified to be a nurse. But when I started working, I remember during my initial weeks, I debated with myself. I said, should I really join the scheme? Because my plan was to just be here for a couple of years, 5 years maximum, and go back. So what was the point of me joining the scheme? So what I actually did was I joined the scheme, and then after a couple of years, I took out the money. By the way, you can do that. You can do that before the 2 years are up. If you join the NHS pension scheme and you want to take out a lump sum, you can do that within 2 years. So that's what I did before the 2 years was up. I took out the lump sum, used it towards, doing up some things that needed doing up around the house, and also I had another emergency as well. And then I thought, should I rejoin? Is there a point? I actually took some time to ponder on that. And then a friend advised me that it was wise to actually join the pension scheme. And I'm glad I did, because look at me. Where am I now? 25 years later, I'm still here in the UK. Had I not joined the pension scheme, which my employer also contributes towards, had I not done that, I wouldn't have had all that free money. I like to call it free money because my employer also puts something as well for me in there. And I always wonder, had I not joined the NHS pension scheme, would I have managed to save what I have saved so far by myself? You might say that actually you might have saved the money, you might have invested the money towards SP 500, opened an ISA or something like that. You might say that, but mind you, at the time, I didn't have financial literacy. I didn't know anything about investing. I didn't know about any of that, about having stocks and all that. So I'm pretty sure that the years would have just rolled by with nothing set aside. I mean, I might have tried to save, but then the temptation to go and dip into that saving would have been high because of those emergencies I told you about. Because when you save for yourself without actually opening up an account that will force you to commit, like opening an ISA, SP 500, having stocks somewhere, then the temptation is less for you to go and withdraw that money, because sometimes you have to go through a process. So that is a bit of discouragement. So I always wonder about that. But anyway, like I said, I'm glad I joined the scheme because I know I have something, even though there are issues with the pensions. I mean, there's a lot of talk about pensions nowadays, and to be honest with you, I don't want to think about it right now. I really don't, because right now, as a middle-aged woman, what I really want to focus on are things that are within my control. That is what I want to focus on. And having said all of that, the main point that I want to drive home in this video is that despite all the planning, investing, looking into the future, doing this and that, despite all of that, what I've learned is the importance of gratitude, focusing on what you have, what is going for you, those little things. And I'll share something with you. Before I got my current job, when I qualified to be a nurse, I started applying for nursing jobs, different nursing jobs, because that time the visa rules had changed, so I was panicking. So I got called for an interview, and during that time I wasn't driving. So I needed to get the bus to go to my interview. So it so happened that I missed the only bus that I needed to get to my interview on time. I mean, I cried. I was like, God, why me? Why is this happening to me when there are these visa changes happening? But guess what? I didn't get the job because obviously I didn't get there on time. It was already too late by the time I got there. So that was a lost cause. They said I could reapply when another position came out if I wanted to. Excuse me. So I went back to the drawing board, started applying, sending out more applications, and I got called for an interview, and I got a job, and it was much better than the other job. I mean, according to my opinion anyway, the position that I got was far better than the other nursing job that I had applied for. So it just goes to show that sometimes things happen for a reason. Even though I had those emergencies, things happened in the past, I went through the challenges. What I know now is that things happen for a reason. And I've also learned to trust God. As a Christian, I've learned to trust God in all things because things happen for a reason. Instead of dwelling on what I've lost, what I haven't achieved yet, I should focus on what I've achieved, those small wins. And I must also focus on gratitude. I must focus on what I've managed to do right now and what I'm doing towards my goal, towards my plans. It's about doing what I can with what I have. This is what I've learned along the way. So yeah, I don't know what to think about everything that I've said. As always, feel free to chip in the comment section.